Well, today we're discussing a new tragic story. Last year, Pavan Bhatt lost his grandmother and uncle in a house fire. And just last week, a coroner's court concluded that the fire was caused by an electrical fault from within their Hotpoint tumble dryer.
Yeah, Pavan joins us now alongside Alice. Morning to you both.
Morning, guys.
Pav, thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate you coming in and telling your story to us.
Thank you for having me.
So, your grandmother and uncle, basically your grandmother raised you, right?
Absolutely.
So, what kind of people were they to start with, just to set the scene for us?
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother was the mother figure in my life.
Yeah.
You know, she taught me pretty much everything I know. She was strong and powerful as a woman. She was very independent. She very much wore the pants in the house as well. So we all listened to her. Yeah. And she sort of, you know, kept that tradition even through my uncle's brain damage, which was tragic. She took the role to take care of him, maintaining her independence. And likewise, my uncle was like a second father to me. You know, he treated me as his own. He never wronged me. So yeah, they were just wonderful people. Yeah.
Now, you weren't in the house that day, but what happened?
So, yeah, I left for work in the morning. So I wasn't there, unfortunately, when the events occurred. From what I know, I was on the train back home. And as I got some signal at the station, I get a call from my neighbor, who has been very helpful. She's been lovely throughout this process, telling me there's a fire. So I managed to get on the phone with her, and the train door shuts and the train moves. So the phone call cuts.
Oh, my word.
And at that point, it was just panic setting in. I get to the next station. I run up outside, get on the phone with her, tell her to, to call 999, message my friends, message my girlfriend to, get to the house. And I'm on my way back. And I don't remember the train journey. It was so blurry. There was a million things going on in my head. And I get back to Edgware Station, and I remember it was just raining, and I just sprint down all the way to the house. I get to the street covered in rain, and I just see police cars, ambulances, fire brigades, neighbours out. It was like a fever dream.
It's your worst nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like something you see from a film or something.
Absolutely.
And then when did you realise that your grandmother and uncle had been taken to hospital? What was that?
Well, I ran down to the house, and it was all like police taped off. I managed to see my neighbour and my girlfriend there. They sort of brought me to them, and that's when I spoke to, I think, someone from the paramedics, who told me that both my grandma and my uncle were in an ambulance separately. I heard that my grandma was conscious at that point, which I thought was a positive sign. My uncle seemed like he was faring a lot worse. And I didn't get to see them at all for several hours until around midnight, when they were taken to hospital, and then I could finally get to hospital.
And they'd inhaled a lot of smoke. There was a lot of smoke that was there, and soot. But you managed to speak to your grandma. You couldn't speak to your uncle, though.
Yeah, that's right. So my grandma was conscious.
Yeah.
So I got to the hospital. It was around midnight, and I managed to find where she was in the ward.
Yeah.
I saw the minute I saw her, her face was covered in black soot. Her skin was covered in black soot. She was coughing up black phlegm. It was horrible. And my first concern was, are you okay? And what has happened? And the first thing she turned around and told me was, is Deepak, which is my uncle, is he okay? How is he doing? She wasn't concerned for herself, but rather for him. So I had to just put her mind at ease, tell her everything will be okay. And then she told me that they were sleeping. They smelt some spices. They thought I was home and cooking. Turns out it wasn't that. And by the time she got up, it was pitch black in the house with the smoke. She tried to get out, but she couldn't in her confusion.
Both your uncle and your grandmother sadly passed due to that day. I'm so sorry. Obviously, there was an inquest recently. What did you think had caused that fire?
Initially, I had no idea. I don't think I really even processed, what is the cause of the fire. It was more so, are they going to be okay? after they passed, I heard some things of where the fire originated from. For example, it was in the kitchen, there was an appliance there. And then I think I found out at some point that it could have been the tumble dryer. It was a point of interest. And from that, through the sort of process of the inquest with the experts, reviewing this 6-month-old device, which was kept in top condition, it was found that due to internal components or internal electrical faults and bad design, that it was the tumble dryer which caused the fire itself.
Alex, let's bring you in.
Yeah.
The story's so unbelievably sad. How do we know there isn't, how do we know this isn't a huge problem?
Well, we don't yet. And as with so many what turn out to be huge stories, like the Post Office, it's going to rely, sadly, because our country has no good system, it's going to rely on lawyers, and Pavan has an excellent lawyer, the guy at weekday, who has done a lot of digging in the past on Whirlpool stories, journalists like myself and consumer organisations, to put the ends together and to ask the fire brigade, to ask the lawyers, to ask the independent forensic scientists, are there any fires of this ilk? Now, in the inquest, there were 3 forensic scientists there. 2 of them said it was the cause of fire was an electrical fault with the machine. Whirlpool's forensic scientist said it was someone smoking a cigarette. And for me, that sort of reflects the amount of engagement that a manufacturer like Whirlpool has in this at this stage. We've asked them for a statement, for a response, or for any kind of engagement. Are you investigating this? Is this a recall? Are there other problems? And we've had absolutely no response. But what we are fighting for is to pull together those cases. We understand that the London Fire Brigade might be looking into some of other cases with this same part in those machines. If it is part of a bigger problem, we know that there are at least 430,000 of those machines, like Pavan's family had in their kitchen, out there in the UK at the moment in homes. And if that particular part, which we suspect was put into other manufacturers' machines, because it was imported from China, used in many different brands, then there could be millions of machines out there. And we're back to the same story where we are trying to engage the manufacturer. Is this a problem? Do you know of any other fires? But around the country, there could be lawyers, there could be forensic scientists, all knowing about other fires, but they keep that advice separate because they're not allowed to disclose it, or they don't disclose it. We don't have that database. So it's really important to tie that information together.
And also really important to know, well, what can we do in the meantime as well? Because obviously this is going to take a while to kind of become a cohesive battle, essentially.
Absolutely.
Let's go now to Sabrina Cohen-Hatton. She's the Chief Fire Officer at West Sussex Fire and Rescue Service. Good morning, Sabrina. Some of these statistics are so scary and so frightening. Can you tell some of our viewers things that they should do? Can you give us some advice so that we react safely?
Absolutely. And just first of all, I want to say to Pavan, I'm so sorry that you lost people that you love that way. I know it takes a lot of courage to carry on talking about something so painful, but you're raising awareness and helping a lot of people. So thank you for that, first off. And I think when it comes to white goods, people don't often think about the risks that can come with that. If you're using hair straighteners, for example, it's really obvious that there's a fire risk because they're hot, but people will use a tumble dryer and not necessarily think about it. And I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, please don't stick your tumble drying on if you're about to go to bed. I know that electricity can be cheaper if you're on a cheaper tariff at night, but if you put something in and then you go to bed and there's a fire, you're not going to know about it until it gets really, really severe. So that's the first thing to say. Also, if you've got a tumble dryer, there's a website that you can register it with called Register My Appliance. And if there's any manufacturer recalls, that will be recalled back and you'll get an alert. So it can be really helpful for you, especially if you've bought something secondhand, for instance, then at least you've got that alert there coming through. But the other thing to say is make sure that you clean your lint regularly. It can build up and that can be really flammable. And also think about how it's plugged in. Especially if you haven't got much space in your kitchen, it can be really tempting to plug in an extension lead and another extension lead, and then you've got lots of power-hungry appliances plugged into that. If you can, please avoid that. Tumble dryers are power-hungry. Just plug it directly into the socket and leave it.
Okay.
And when we talk about tumble dryer specifically, is the lint the key thing, do you think, Sabrina? Like cleaning that, making sure that's kind of clear?
It is really important to do because if you leave the lint in there, it can build up and it's flammable. So it is really important that you do that. Another thing that people might not be aware of is if you're washing, for example, rags that you've used to clean up something oily, even though it's been through the wash, you can still end up with remnants in there and it can stay flammable. And actually, tumble dryers get quite hot. So anything in there that might be flammable isn't a good idea. So if you can, if you're doing oily rags, for example, just hang them up on the radiator instead.
OK, thanks, Sabrina. And Alice, you wanted to add something?
Well, we're waiting now for the coroner to issue a prevention of future deaths report, which is really key. And in that, if he names any kind of manufacturer as being at fault or perhaps should take action, then they have to take action. There's no legal comeuppance if they don't, but they have to take action. They have to respond to that report. And we're going to be watching that very carefully to see what that coroner says should be done. And we will, you know, in memory of Pavan's family, stay with this story.
Absolutely. And also, Pavan, Sabrina was absolutely right. Just by being here, I think it just opens up that discussion. We did go to Whirlpool for a right of reply and we haven't heard back.
Department for Business and Trade spokesperson said we've been in contact with the London Fire Brigade regarding these inquiries into the fire and will carefully consider any recommendations the coroner makes. We are clear that all tumble dryers available in the UK market must meet legal requirements for safety. Manufacturers have a duty to monitor their products and should take action if safety issues emerge.
Also, the Chartered Trading Standards Institute said this is such a tragic loss of life and our thoughts are with Pavan and their family. No life should be lost from a faulty appliance and Whirlpool Corporation need to take immediate action to understand which makes and models are affected and make urgent contact with consumers who they believe have these appliances in their home. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Keep
Alice.
up the good work, Alice.
Thank you so much for visiting our This Morning YouTube channel. We upload new content every single day, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button and we'll see you in the morning.